Good afternoon. My name is John. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, John.
Today I am interviewing Rick at his home in Farmington, New Mexico. It is January the 23rd, 2017, and Rick's sobriety date is April the 7th, 1988. I've known Rick for 10 years. He's been a good friend of mine and a good example of the program. And this is for the District 8 archives. So I'm going to let Rick tell you about his experience, strength, and hope, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Here's Rick.
Good afternoon. My name's Rick. I'm an alcoholic. And like John said, my sobriety date is the 7th of April, 1988. And that is the last time I got wasted. And I'm one of the anomalies in Alcoholics Anonymous. When I got sober, that's been the only sobriety date I've ever had. And I have intentions of keeping that date tonight. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Oh, golly, being alcoholic is one of the very last things I ever wanted to be. I have some many unpleasant memories of our alcoholic father and his temper and his inability to deal with the reality. And I did not want to be alcoholic. And my brother and I have the same thoughts on that line. And both of us almost made it till we were 30. We were both 29 when we got married the first time. And part of that was fear that we didn't want to subject children to things that we were subjected to. We were raised in the western part of New York State, in between Buffalo and Rochester, a rural county. The small town we were raised in had about 5,000 people, and I think there were 17 bars and 17 churches, so spirituality was important for the community on both sides, both liquid and metaphysical spirituality. There's not a whole lot to do in upstate New York in the wintertime. There's some pretty vicious winters, and hanging out in bars is, they're warm, and there's people in there, so it's something that our lifestyle with our father and our stepfather was just part of how we were raised. I didn't get drunk till I was 14. I looked forward to it with great anticipation. And it was everything I had heard. Everybody said they had so much fun, and I did. I had my own quart of beer for the first time, and it was enough to get me drunk. I never remember not drinking. As soon as I was able to hold one of those long-necked beer bottles, I was able to take sips out of Daddy's beer. And the theory was that if you let a child drink at home, they wouldn't be alcoholic. Well, of course, that was my alcoholic father's thinking, his alcoholic brother's thinking, their two alcoholic parents' thinking, and it didn't work out very well for my brother nor for me, and for about half of my cousins on my uncle's side. I wanted more that night, and I wasn't able to get it, and I drank every time I had the opportunity after that, and when I say I drank, I got drunk at every opportunity after that. And initially, I would drink until I got sick, which wouldn't take very much. I couldn't drink a whole six-pack and not be sick. So my solution at that time is when I would drink and get drunk when I started feeling queasy, instead of waiting an hour to get sick, I'd go out behind wherever I was and ran my finger down my throat to get the sick over with. And I'm thinking that was not normal drinking behavior unless you're an alcoholic. And I went off to college, and I had some strict guidelines to choose a college. I found a junior college in New York State that taught civil engineering and had the least amount of English requirements for graduation. And that's how I ended up at Erie County Technical Institute, which is now called Erie County Community College. And I joined a fraternity, and there were 3 fraternities, and ours strongly resembled the fraternity depicted in Animal House. We drank a lot, and I was able, soon after I got there, to slam down enough beers in a short period of time to where I rocketed past the get queasy and get sick part, had a couple of blackouts, and that pretty much stopped. So most of my drinking is I remember most of it. You know, there were some blackouts where people told me how much fun I had the night before, and I'd heard people talk about that prior to then, but all my drinking in high school especially was vividly remembered up to and including ramming my finger down my throat. And I didn't want to think that people telling these stories were lying, but that, you know, it just wasn't anything I experienced till I got off to college. And I drank myself out of college. It took over 20 years of sobriety to realize that's what I did, but it's exactly what I did. And they were on the quarter system. I made it for 2 quarters and dropped out for the 3rd quarter, which would have been in March of '68. And went to work for Commercial Airlines and worked for 6 months and 10 days and enlisted in the Marine Corps. Now, in retrospect, I know that the peak year, the Vietnam draft, they hadn't invented the lottery yet, so it was just an outright draft. I was 19 years old and fixing to be 1A, the peak year of the draft. So, of course, heck, Canada was only 50 miles away to the west. Get a map and look if you need to, and that wasn't an option. So I enlisted to play with airplanes. It cost me 4 years, and it was one of the best decisions I made as far as the military went. I wanted to either work, weight, and balance or fly, and I ended up getting a job as a loadmaster on a transport aircraft, and I really enjoyed my job, and I traveled with some wonderful, wonderful people. We still get together every couple of years nowadays, and I value a lot of those memories. And yes, part of that did include flying in and out of Vietnam. And one time we got chased by MiGs, for crying out loud. That was an exciting day. So my thought, what a guy. I had on a parachute, and I was gonna, if we were shot down, I was gonna parachute out, and I was gonna land in the Golden Triangle of Laos, Burma, and Thailand. And my thoughts, I was just, sell opium for a couple, 3 years. And it wasn't, I should have been having a whole lot of fear that, holy cow, we're getting chased by MiGs. But I was kind of wasted that day anyway. And how I escaped with an honorable discharge is still a miraculous thing as far as I'm concerned, but I did. I was actually careful as best I could be on not getting busted. We drank a lot, we did a lot of drugs, we partied hard, and we were living pretty hard at that time. So I did get out, went back to college I went back to the airlines for a year and paid for a brand new loaded 4-wheel drive pickup, and then went back to college and actually put my mind into going to college and graduated with a 3.5 with a degree in professional photography, which in hindsight, I was told to follow my dreams, and I did, and it's a field that just is not anything makes a whole lot of money in. There's a handful of people that make money in photography, but I'm definitely not one of them. I still enjoy it. It's a whole lot of fun. I love portraits of people in flowers, in landscapes, and I do those things for fun nowadays, and it is mostly quite enjoyable. So I had been engaged to a WM, woman Marine. We got disengaged. While I was back working at the airport in Rochester, got engaged to a nurse, and they're supposed to be party animals, and I know a whole bunch of them in AA who definitely are party animals, but Lori was not one of them. We got disengaged and searched far and wide for somebody who could party with me. And I found that with Bobby, and I was a carpenter at that time, and we got married. We were drunk when we met, we were drunk when I proposed, we were drunk when we got married, and we stayed that way for 10 years. 5 years into it, we had some quiet Sunday morning discussions because she was whiskey drunk the night before. It was like I was married to 2 different people. There's pretty blonde-haired, blue-eyed lady, and this witch that lived in a bottle, and the witch, I think the spelling started with a capital B. she drank too much, and we knew I did too many drugs. If you'll quit, I'll quit. And life went on for 5 more years. And one day I called home, and she said she was going into a drug and alcohol treatment center. And I dropped her off there on Monday morning. They told me family weekend was not that weekend, but the following weekend. And if I was to participate, they requested I be chemically free, was their phrase. And Thursday, the 7th April, 1988, is the last time I got wasted. And I attended all day Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Actually, it was Friday night. And then Monday night, the culmination of family weekend was to go to an open AA meeting. And even though it wasn't for me, I felt really comfortable in that meeting because these were the kind of people I had been partying with for 25 years. And it took not very long for me to realize that I'm as alcoholic as anybody. Actually, it took quite a few months. Initially, I was offered the explanation of the third tradition in Alcoholics Anonymous. The short version states the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. And if I wanted to quit doing all those drugs, and the feds said that truck drivers, which I was an owner-operator, were going to have to start doing the whiz quiz. Even though I was usually clean and sober all week long, I partied hard on weekends because I worked hard on weekdays, and there's no way in the world I was going to pass a whiz quiz. So if I wanted to pass the whiz quiz, I had to quit all of the above, which included alcohol. So, okay, I was qualified to go to AA meetings. And in the next year or two, I heard enough people tell chapters out of my life, and they didn't know me from Adam, that sounded like they had done something really alcoholic. And in my mind, it was just, a memory. It was just something that happened. It wasn't a big deal. But when I heard somebody else say it and it shined light on it from a different direction, I realized that I'm as alcoholic as anybody in an AA meeting. I wasn't a low-bottom drunk, but I'm as alcoholic as anybody there. And the solution for me today is total abstinence. And I wondered what those people in AA had. They had clear looks in their eyes. And when they spoke, I realized it was from the heart. Now, a lot of us who are alcoholic are, dare I say, bullshitters. I'm right up there on top of that. When I drank in a bar, I told stories, I told jokes, and just held court, as best I could. And also, my detector of people telling tales is fairly accurate. There's only 2 people I can think of that looked me right in the eye and told me things and I believed them and they were outright lies. Other than that, I might look like I believed what you were telling me, nod my head up and down, but inside I was thinking, man, what a crock. Does this fool really think I believe all this tales he's telling me? And in AA meetings, my detector just did not go off very often. Every once in a while it would, but mostly it was people talking from the heart, and they had these really clear eyes. And they said what they had done is work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I wanted what they had, so I was willing to work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a sponsor. We worked through the steps. And for me, the third step, I'd heard in meetings that the steps are divided into 3 groups. The first 3 are the admittance steps. The next 6 are the clean up the wreckage of the past steps. And the last 3 are the maintenance steps. And that made sense to me. But I had a problem with the third step, turning my will and my life over to care of God, that what I needed to do was prayer. And that prayer was the third step prayer. And I said it out loud with my then wife. And I was mystified for a couple of years why that literally was the turning point of my sobriety. And somebody at a meeting one time, I think it was up in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, said that, well, duh, you took action, you said a prayer. So for me, the first 2 steps are the admittance steps. The next 7 were the clean up the wreckage of the past, because the third step was crucial in doing the rest of the steps. I still practice the steps to the best of my ability every day. The one I hate the most today is the 10th step, And the one reason I'm sitting here talking about being sober for over 28 years is because of the 10th step. That's to clean up the wreckage of the present step. That's the one that when I realized I'd made a mistake, the book says in two different places, two different ways. One thing is that we review our day at the end of the day and then make a list, make a note of anybody we may need to make amends to. And in another spot in the book, it says pretty much that we know right away when we need to make amends, and the best bet is to do it right now. And that was was a thing that overcame me is not the right word. It's a thing that I noticed that I needed to do, because if it was 10 o'clock in the morning and I didn't go to bed till 11 o'clock, there's 13 hours of crazy thoughts running through my head. So let's do the amends right now, and then I don't have all those crazy thoughts running through my head. Let's see. I moved back to New Mexico. I got sober down outside Austin, Texas, by the way, and a town called Bastrop, the next county downriver from Austin, in Bastrop County, and that's where my home group was. And that's where I went to meetings. That's where my sponsor still lives today, in Cedar Creek, and we're still in communication. And when I had an opportunity to move back to New Mexico to go to work for Halliburton, I needed a job with some company benefits. I had stopped being an over-the-road truck driver due to some physical problems, and I was in my 40s. I was 39 when I got sober, and when I was 44, I moved back to New Mexico and went to work for Halliburton in Farmington and had a job with benefits. And within the first few months, I noticed this dark-haired girl that caught my eye, and we started dating in February of 94. And we got married in June of 95, the week before the International Convention in San Diego, and that's where we went for a honeymoon. And a huge part of our life is going to meetings when we travel. We've been to every international convention since then. Our intention, of course, is to go to Detroit in 2020, and wherever it's going to be in 2025. If we're alive and it's possible, that's more than likely where you'll see us at that week. Being sober and going to meetings is a huge part of our life, and working the 12 steps individually is why we're still married 21 years later. So Alcoholics Anonymous is something that I enjoy very, very much. All meetings are good. Some meetings are just better than others. Once in a while I go to some that I think, I don't know if I'll go back to that one, but it was still a meeting and I still got something out of it. So I'm glad to be sober, and golly, I could talk for years and days about all sorts of other things, but I think that pretty well covers it. And I'm glad to be sober today, and thank you for giving me this opportunity, John.
You're welcome. Thank you, Rick. There were some things in there that I didn't know. Now I do. I'm just going to ask you one quick question, and maybe we got a panel here of his wife and my wife. And what I've been asking most of the people I'm interviewing is, what's the biggest change you've seen in the 28 years since you've came in? What's the biggest change you've seen in Alcoholics Anonymous?
I think the biggest change is that it's rare to be able to smoke in a meeting anymore. When I got here in April of 1988, the home group I had was in a fairly modern office building, and the people in that meeting had taken one of the drop-down ceiling panels off over near a vent, and I don't even think they had a fan, but towards the end of the meeting there was literally a cloud of cigarette smoke billowing out through that vent. and there were often times when it was difficult to see across the rooms. And nowadays, that's rare. Now, tobacco is one of the things I had quit a few years before I got sober. Moderation not being one of my fine points. If I'm going to use tobacco, it's going to be Camel Straight cigarettes. It's going to be Day's Work chewing plugs, Red Man, leaf tobacco, pipes, cigars. Oh, let's not forget Copenhagen. Yeah, I thought I quit tobacco by going to Copenhagen. What a bad mistake that was. And I did an informal survey in my initial few years in AA. If there was a non-smoking table, a non-smoking half, or a non-smoking meeting, that's where I would go to. And I asked anybody I sat near, did you ever smoke? And in my first 5 years of sobriety, I'd been to meetings in about 20 states, and I had already met 5 people who said no. So the biggest change I've seen is not having tobacco in the meetings.
Thanks, Rick. One other question I'm asking every, people I'm interviewing is, what was that point or that time in your life when you felt the psychic change? I know that we go from an alcoholic living and alcoholic thinking, and we still think alcoholically, but when did you have that psychic change? Was there a point in your sobriety, and when did it happen? And talk a little bit about your I know you're a spiritual guy because I've heard you talk. When do you think that time was in your sobriety when you felt that psychic change? Was it? And I'll let you explain a little.
First, I want to say that when I came into meetings and saw the 12 steps and saw the word God, it was a relief to me. Bobby and I had been searching. We thought we wanted religion. And she being raised Catholic and me being raised Presbyterian, there were some things that just didn't quite mesh. And she was raising her children as Catholic, but as a divorced Catholic, she couldn't take communion. And I was going to church with them just because that's what families are supposed to do. So when I saw the 12 steps, it was a sense of relief that, well, I think this is what I've been looking for. And I thought that it would work. The 9th step is one that, holy cow, I got to start apologizing. But okay, y'all told me do them one at a time and just worry about them one at a time, and I did. So the first time I noticed it, the book talks about we change when we get sober, and other people notice it long before we do. Mm-hmm. And I got sober in April, and the following Thanksgiving, my mom and stepdad came down for a visit, and it was an observation that she made that there were things that were happening that were just not big deals anymore. When I was 3 and had a temper, my mother is the youngest of 3 sisters, and her sisters, and her parents didn't have problems with temper, and I did. And she didn't know how to handle it, and she literally used to tie me in a chair. Now, I found out from Hunt Peacock that was child abuse. So, okay, well, it's how the poor lady can deal with it. That's all I know. So her observation was that I wasn't blowing up. Now, is my temper totally gone? No, absolutely not. Is it much better than it used to be? Yes. I went year after year driving a truck where I couldn't keep a damn windshield because I kept throwing screwdrivers at it. Or little small wrenches, like people do something stupid, so I fixed them and cussed and threw a little wrench at my windshield, and it might be a week or it might be 6 months after I'd just gotten it replaced, and it just went on and on. So her observation is when I realized that I must be changing.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Rick. I've got just one other question for you, and then we'll wrap it up unless somebody else has a question for you. But I noticed that how important is service work to you? I notice I see you at district meetings. I know that you sponsor people. I know that you are real active in going to conventions and helping out, always being there. And I just want to know what part of service work, how does that affected your sobriety in your life today?
Service work, I've been told, is one of the legs of the three-legged stool that being sober rests upon. And my sponsor, let me back up a little bit. One of the things that attracted me to AA is there were no people wagging their fingers at me. And I don't know about anybody else, but I had enough finger waggers in my life. The high school guidance counselor kept telling me, Richard, you have so much potential. She's looking at these national test results, and she's in one hand and looking at my report card, in the other hand, there must have been 2 Richard Greenacres going to school is all she knew. And Bill didn't say that this is one of the things that you have to do, but how he approached it, he said, on the last Sunday of the month, a bunch of us just stay after the meeting and we clean the place up. And that seemed reasonable. So we stayed and we cleaned the place up. And a bunch of us do this now and a bunch of us do that now. And I've always been a person who enjoyed being of service to other people. And it has always given me a sense of ownership. And that's what it did in AA. That if I'm one of the people that's chairing a meeting, or pushing the broom, or washing ashtrays or coffee cups, I belong in that meeting. And one of the gifts, in addition to that, my sponsor gave me it. Sober for a few months, and I came back whining about the people in Meridian, Mississippi not being very welcoming. There were less than 10 people in that meeting, and I walked in, and nobody stuck out a hand. Nobody said hello. They were all busy talking in their clique, and they didn't even ask me to speak during the meeting. And I definitely did not feel welcome in Meridian. And I was expecting Bill to fill out the form and mail it to New York City, telling the people in Meridian weren't behaving properly. What he said instead was, "Did you stick your hand out?"
There you go.
And I said, "No, I didn't." And he said, "Well, you can feel as welcome as you want to be." And that's been a huge gift. That I was traveling for a living then, and Andrea and I have a huge part of our sobriety is when we travel, we go to meetings, and when I walk in, I stick out my hand and I introduce myself. When I walk in, if I want a cup of coffee, if I see the coffee pot, fine, I just walk to it, and if not, I ask where it is and help myself, because I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And on the same note, when I see somebody I don't recognize at a meeting that's one of my local meetings, I introduce myself. I know what it feels like not to be welcomed, and I want people to feel welcome. And there was a bonus to that a number of years ago. A guy walked in I didn't know, and I introduced myself, and lo and behold, I'd known him for a long, long time. He married a girl from my hometown. We had similar party habits and similar music interests. And here we are at a meeting 20-some years later. The last time I'd seen him, it was really drunk out at his house in Texas. And here we are sitting next to each other in a meeting at Alcoholics Anonymous 20-some years later. And the good news is right now is that he's sober again. And I'm excited about that. I thought I was getting a chance to see him today, but the DAV van canceled today, so I didn't have a chance to go down and visit with him. But I'm really excited about that. We've got a history that goes back a long, long time, and there's not that many people I know in AA that know me from the other side. So, service work is cool.
Yep. Well, thank you, Rick. Really want to thank you.